introduce yourself? Where are you from and what do you do?
Great, yeah. So I'm Michal. I come from Poland, so the name is Polish. That's Polish spelling. It's Michal, actually in Polish.
Oh.
I'm currently a co-founder and the chief growth officer of KANDO.
KANDO.
And KANDO is an AI-driven investor discovery platform. And our mission is to make fundraising for startups easier and more accessible to everyone. Maybe I want to tell you why did we even start building
this platform? That will be a great Spark story.
So we are all, there are 4 co-founders, and all of us were involved in startups to some extent. And we've also, all of us experienced the fundraising process, and some of us from both sides, as an investor and also as the startup founder. And our experiences are actually validated by a research that we came across that during the first 3 years of a startup life, founders spend 60% of their time on fundraising. So that's, you know, if you have 2 founders, that's more than 1 full-time job. And 80% of this fundraising effort is actually wasted on repetitive research and investor discovery and validation. So what you might experience or see around you, or also see in the Spark community, people search for different lists on the internet, different investor lists, and then they exchange shared Google spreadsheets with each other, and then put some notes over there, and then those lists get lost or broken. And then when this fundraising process is done, this list gets discarded and nobody ever uses it again. So we thought that, you know, maybe it would be a good idea to have a platform that, number one, you don't need to search any lists anymore. That every reasonable investor you might want to approach is already in the database, right? And there is some sort of reputation attached to the users of the platform, also to the investors. So you can see who is more eager to respond, who is kind of encouraging cold pitches if they're relevant, who only accepts warm introductions. So we don't waste time, right? We learn as a community collectively, and then we are much more efficient with our time. And then the second problem is the problem of curation, or maybe finding the investors that are right for your specific startup.
Okay.
Because everybody knows that there is, Sequoia or Climate
Benchmark. Yes.
Yes, but it doesn't mean that your startup actually is the most relevant startup for them. It can be, I'm not saying it isn't, but you have a trend in the market that, especially in the very early stage funding, there is more and more micro VCs. And it's almost like the difference between angel investing and those micro VCs is becoming indistinguishable. So there is a very large number of both VCs, investors, angels, and startups, let's say, in the long tail of the spectrum. So when the use case or the focus is very, very specific, and there might be, for example, 10 people on the investor side, and maybe only 10 startups in the world that tackle one very, very specific problem or niche or domain. And this is why we think that our AI is actually very relevant, because it looks into the declared investment preferences, but it also looks in historical data, past transactions, and actual portfolio of those investors. So our whole model, in general, is based on the assumption that certain properties of startups are transitive. So if somebody is interested in startup A and startup B is similar to startup A, this investor will also be interested in startup B. Because I mean, this is based on rationality. Of
Mhm.
course, it's not always so rational, but nevertheless, it kind of narrows down the list of people that you have to contact. So imagine there is let's say a database or a directory of investors, and you have a startup that is active, let's say, in AI. And in this directory, you find investors that are interested in AI, and you find 20 people already. I mean, this is all well and good. You can do a manual search, you find it, and then you start contacting these people. Now imagine that this database grows and actually contains all the investors in the world, or half of the investors in the world. And let's say you have 200,000 people in the database. And now you search manually, and if you look at AI, you see there are 2,000 people. Now, what you're gonna do? What's your best guess? You're gonna go alphabetically, pitching everybody,
No.
or you're gonna go at random?
I want an AI suggestion.
Exactly. So this is what we're saying. I mean, we have a list of 200,000 companies and 140,000 investment rounds in the database, and based on that, we are trying to match startups with investors who are most likely to take a call with them, or basically book a meeting with them.
Right,
because
right.
our AI doesn't see the quality of the startup, or doesn't see the quality of the investors for that matter. All we can do is we can actually reduce the noise and introduce people who are the best match for each other.